Welcome everyone to this May 7th meeting of the California Fish and Game Commission Tribal Committee. I am in a remote location at Trinidad Rancheria and coming to you from the land of the Yurok people, ancestral territory, and the Trinidad Rancheria Trust property where our government offices are today. So with me, I have Jessica Gravel, our marine manager, and Janine Pfeiffer, our consultant. Those are the folks in the room with me. So, and I'll hand it off to the other locations. But first, callers and those joining via Zoom have been placed on mute. And when it's time for members of the public to engage in the conversation about an agenda item, they will receive instructions on how to indicate they would like to speak. Please make sure to keep your microphone on mute unless you have been called on to speak. And note also that you have the ability to turn on your video, but it is not required. So with that, I will turn it over to Melissa.
Thank you, Chair Hosta Carmison. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
So technical notes for members of the public. If you're participating in the Zoom web meeting and calling in by phone, please make sure that your phone number and your Zoom meeting are linked. If you logged into Zoom first and used the call me option, the linkage happened automatically. If you are joining by phone only and wish to speak to an agenda item, staff will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. If you are having technical difficulties with the meeting, please contact FGC at fgc.ca.gov, or if you need to use a phone, 916-902-9286. Again, that's FGC at fgc.ca.gov or 916-902-9286.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask, we do have a quorum with me here, and I'm going to ask Melissa to introduce staff and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife staff. Go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you, Chair Hosta Carmison. Again, I'm Melissa Miller-Henson, Executive Director for the California Fish and Game Commission. We have with us here in Sacramento today your Marine Advisor, Susan Ashcraft. We have Wildlife Advisor, Ari Corman. You've already chatted with Regulatory Analyst David Howe. And then we also have our Executive Analyst, Kelsey Laird. Our colleagues from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife include the Department Tribal Liaison, Sarah Fonseca. We have Captain Chris Stutz from the Law Enforcement Division. We have Tribal Coordinator and Liaison, Samara Maxey from the Marine Region. And we won't have Scholar J today, is that correct?
I definitely know Sarah.
Okay, all right, he's not online at the moment. We may have Branch Chief Jay Rowan join us a little bit later. He's with the Fisheries Branch. He's not currently online yet. And then I'm not sure if he's joined us yet, but if he hasn't, he will be joining us for the meeting. We want to welcome and thank Senior Biodiversity Program Manager and Tribal Liaison Mike Escrow from the California Ocean Protection Council. So today for the Commission Tribal Committee, this meeting, committees for the commission are made up of to 2 commissioners who co-chair each meeting. Members are assigned annually by the commission. Currently, the tribal committee is chaired by 1 commissioner, that is Commissioner Jackie Hosta Carmison. Our goal today is informed discussion to guide future decision making, and we need your cooperation to ensure a lively and comprehensive dialogue. We are operating under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, so it's important to note that the committee chair cannot take action independent of a full commission. Instead, the chair makes recommendations to the commission at regularly scheduled meetings. In this case, that would be the June commission meeting. These proceedings are being recorded and will be posted to our website and or YouTube page for reference and archival purposes. Items may be heard in any order pursuant to the determination of the committee chair, which of course is Chair Hofstad Carmson. Requests for regulatory change must be directed to the commission and submitted on the required petition form, of course. That's available on the commission website and from staff. However, at the committee's discretion, it may request that staff follow up on items of potential interest to the committee and possible recommendation to the commission. Committee meetings operate informally and provide an opportunity for everyone to contribute to the discussion about agenda items. If you wish to contribute to an agenda item, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. Share your name and affiliation, if any. Recognize that time is limited, so be concise to give others time to speak. If there are multiple speakers with the same concerns or ideas to express, please consider appointing a group spokesperson. Generally, participants in person are typically called on first, followed by participants joining by Zoom or phone. And feel free to continue contributing to the dialogue as a topic discussion evolves. If speaking during the general public comment agenda item, which is at the end of the agenda today, the subject matter you present or discuss should not be related to any item on the current agenda. Public comment on current agenda items will be taken at the time the committee discusses that item. Please note the nearest emergency exit for use in the unlikely event of an emergency where you are located. And then again, today we are using the Zoom meeting format, which means that you can mute and unmute yourself at any time to join the conversation. And you can also turn on your video if you would like, though it's not required. If you would like to contribute to the conversation and you are on Zoom, use the Zoom raise hand button to raise your hand. If you're on your computer, the raise hand button is located at the bottom of the window and also at the bottom of the participant list. You may have to hover your pointer over the Zoom window for the row of options to appear. On the mobile app, raise hand is located at the bottom of the screen, and you may need to unmute your microphone when you speak. If you're on the phone only, press *9 on your phone once to raise your hand and alert us if you would like to contribute to the conversation. If you press *9 on your phone a second time, you will take yourself out of the queue. So please only press *9 once. And you will also need to unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone. And for those who are in the meeting and may have your audio on, if you can make sure that that's muted so that as messages and such come through on your computer, we don't continue to hear them on the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And I am going to go ahead and approve the agenda as written, but I would like to add introductions of tribal chairs, tribal vice chairs, tribal staff, tribal representatives before we proceed with our next item of co-management. So if you are a tribal chair or vice chair, please go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself. I see my friend Rick Warner from Elk Valley.
Hi, Jackie. I was just unmuting. I'm Rick Warner with Elk Valley Rancheria. Happy to be here. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank you for joining, Rick. Rick is the vice chair for Elk Valley Rancheria. Any other chairs or vice chairs on the call today? How about tribal staff or tribal representatives?
I'll say hi. My name's Megan Rocha. I'm the executive director for the Polyglot Tribe of Yurok people. Excuse me.
Thanks for joining, Megan.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. Buffy McQuillan, representing the Federated Indians of Great Rancheria.
Hi, Buffy.
And there.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Kurt Rose. I'm the environmental planner for the Paula Band of Mission Indians.
Welcome, Kurt.
I'm McKernan, Marine Director for the Yurok Tribe.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining. Other tribal representatives or staff online? And again, in the room, I'll let the folks with me who are here with me today introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Ron Sundberg, Natural Resources Director, Trinidad Rancheria.
Afternoon, I'm Jessica Gravel, the Marine and Climate Resiliency Program Manager.
Janine Pfeiffer, ethnoecologist.
Thank you, everyone. Did we miss anyone at all online? All righty, let's go ahead and move forward. Melissa, are we clear to move forward?
I think so.
Wonderful. So I would like to open up our next item, item 2, co-management roundtable, and discuss tribal co-management initiatives and projects planned or underway in collaboration with public agencies and California tribes. Tribal representatives are invited to share their co-management interest and experiences under this item. Do I have anyone just eager to share what they're working on? Everybody's pretty quiet today. Must be the after lunch calm.
Yeah, sure. Nothing to present necessarily, but we have a couple of different, excuse me, we have a couple of different projects currently in the works. So we are continuing the data collection in collaboration with Cal Poly Humboldt that we started last year. So we're going into the second year of our field season for some subtitle forest surveys, including PISCO data that we have collected and have begun to standardize. We have also started continuing the work with our rockfish recruitment surveys all in Trinidad Bay and Harbor. What do you think? Those are the big ones that come to mind.
Thank you, Jessica. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Buffy, what are you all working on?
I was finishing lunch. Which is
Sorry
why
about
it was quiet. So we've got a couple of things we are working on around co-management. One of the, I guess, issues and concerns, and probably more so why I'm here, is I'm getting a little bit of confusion around implementing co-management through departments within CNRA. And I'm wondering, I guess, what if you guys have had any other similar experiences, and this is related to the passage of the co-management bill last session. And I don't know if Megan, you can maybe speak to this too. I can't even remember the number offhand. And so some of the questions that have come up as a result of that is how, what is the difference between agencies within or departments within CNRA to do MOUs versus co-management types of agreements? And I don't really know, I guess, the path to try to find solutions. So we're sort of just asking questions right now of other departments or divisions within the agency, because we're not wanting to, I guess, establish a JPA, which is, I think, what's generally described now in the co-management legislation. And so, but we also want things that are a little bit more binding within co-management, and we really want to have decision-making authority. But we're not finding that in the draft templates that are being used for MOUs within the CNRA division. So that's just sort of where we're at. We're kind of at a little bit of a circular point with different divisions within CNRA.
Thank you for sharing that, Buffy. That's exactly why this committee is useful and important. Megan, do you have any response to Buffy before I respond?
I would just say, I mean, I guess, I think it's important to understand if Grayton has requested like consultation, and that's not really our place to ask that, but the idea with the AB 1284 was really sitting down and negotiating through some of those things. And so I would hope that CNRA would take a leadership role in doing that, and have some like orchestrated, consistent way to bring together the relevant departments that may be impacting the tribe's request. But it sounds, if I'm understanding what Buffy's saying, it sounds like there's still a siloed approach that's being taken. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think it's definitely siloed. What my sense of it is also, Megan, that you have you have divisions, like you have an organizational structure within CNRA that, some departments, divisions have, like their directors have a great deal of authority. And then there's like there's I think the division within like underneath the Secretary of Tribal Affairs that are leading initiatives and creating agreements, and maybe the representatives, I guess, of Secretary Crowfoot. And that's a little bit of I think the unspoken nuances here of like, how does one bring all of those authorities together and figures that play a role in bringing agreements forward. So it is siloed, but it's also, I think, a little bit of question around like, well, who really has the authority to do MOUs versus like co-management agreements?
Yeah, so I think the vision with the co-management agreement approach is that CNRA would take a leadership role and bring all the right people to the table, right? And that's why I think in the language, it's the secretary or designee after the tribe makes that request. And I know there is sort of something, this is a little bit of a tangent, but related. We understand CNRA is also working on this toolkit. And it's a little unclear to me, like if that's giving like state staff direction on how to proceed, or if that's a more outward facing like purpose. So, oh, and Megan's here. Okay. So maybe she could answer some of that about the toolkit stuff. But that was the original vision, was sort of having CNRA, the secretary, either himself or through a designation, identify who the lead would be that would bring all the right people to the table after the tribe made that request.
Thanks, Megan. That's helpful.
So Buffy, have you requested government to government consultation on it yet?
Well, we're in government to government with the entity that's proposing an MOU.
Okay.
And so I think what we're trying to figure out is who else needs to come to the party. It just is sort of unclear.
Yeah, so Chair Hostler Carmison, we do have Megan Flyer from the California Natural Resources Agency with us on Zoom. And she's representing Assistant Secretary, or I'm sorry, Deputy Secretary Geneva E.B. Thompson. And I believe she can speak to this, but I also think part of the answer to the question is that there is a lot of coordination effort happening through the agency, and Megan's obviously going to be able to talk about that. But the reality is the departments individually also have authority. So if you look, for instance, at California State Parks, Armando has indicated, and the director of state parks has indicated that they have somewhere between 40 and 50 MOUs in place as of just maybe a month ago that have all been put in place in the last few years. And so, that director has the authority to enter into those MOUs and those agreements. And where my understanding is where directors don't believe that they have that authority, they will obviously coordinate with agency, but would love to let Megan speak to this topic a little bit, if you don't mind.
That would be wonderful. Please go ahead, Megan.
Dusan Saga. Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Flair. I'm the Deputy Director for Tribal Affairs at CNRA. Here trying to represent Deputy Secretary Geneva E.B. Thompson. I can speak to some of this, maybe not all of it. I cannot speak to the bill itself so much, but as far as the toolkit that Megan Rocha and others have mentioned, so that is our tribal stewardship policy that we initiated kind of an early consultation to get early feedback on earlier this year. And we're trying to kind of compile all of the different ideas. But the gist of it is that the policy and toolkit will help outline ways that state staff, tribes, and other partners can come together to advance tribal access, co-management, and land return. And I think the idea of that is, in fact, to provide templates, whether that's MOUs or different approaches to these different governing bodies engaging that will be useful. And so I think, Buffy, to your point, if the MOUs that you've been and the tribe have been seeing aren't working, we would love to talk to you about that. And especially if you have like a good example of something that the tribe really likes, we're looking for templates and tools that we can use agency-wide and amongst other parties to advance those goals. I'm not sure if that answers everyone's questions, but I can try to answer any others. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Megan.
If I can just maybe address some of the things that I think Melissa tried to bring up with respect to MOUs. The MOUs that do exist are not MOUs that offer the same opportunities under co-management. They really just sort of set out that there's a relationship and in certain areas, but it's not really about, joint decision making. And so they really do fall short of actual co-management. And I think that it's trying to figure out how to connect directors like Armando to, whoever is going to be the designee. And I guess that's more of the primary question here is Secretary Crowfoot designating, the deputy or, Geneva? I'm bad at titles. Is that going to be the automatic designee or, because I don't think that that's ever really been firmly established. And then does that eliminate an opportunity for us to go directly to Secretary Crowfoot? I don't think it does, but I guess I'm just thinking out loud, is that only a relationship, I guess, in a conversation that's going to be occurring with whoever is the designee, if it's not going to be the secretary himself.
Buffy, I'm going to let Megan answer, but I want to interject something really quick. And how I would recommend to my tribal council handling that, putting on my tribal hat right now, is when we initiate the government to government consultation, we would request Secretary Crowfoot to be part of that initial consultation. And then we would lay out what our goals are. And I understand exactly what you mean. You want strength in a document.
Mm-hmm.
You said earlier, something more binding than an MOU. That
Right.
really calls out that equal place at the table for
Right.
decision making. So that means, to me, that means it's not just the tribe that's agreeing to things, it's whichever agency that meets the tribe in that place, if possible, under that legislation or under state law. That would be the caveat. Can it be done? What you're asking, what your tribe is asking for, can it be done under current regulation or the new bill? And I guess for me, I would, from what Megan said, it sounds like those templates are super important to really have tribes weigh in on the templates. Because, it may or may not work for all 110 tribes in California.
Right.
So if, for instance, at the harbor here, and we're entering into co-management on restoring the kelp beds and, the species in the harbor, well, we need equal decision-making power from the tribe's perspective, working with first Director Bonham, maybe first Secretary Crowfoot, Director Bonham, and then the regional representatives or the kelp working group. But for us, we would always get that understanding at that high level first, because then if we're not getting it from the district level, we can go back to that higher level.
Right.
And I mean, I know you know all that, but I just, in my methodical mind, that's how I would look at it.
No, I appreciate that, Jackie. I think that the law came in as we were negotiating with the department and thought that we had the decision maker at the table negotiating. And then it seemingly now a year, I guess, into this, almost into the law going to effect, have just been told this literally happened like a week or so ago, that this all switched gears on us. As we're fine tuning our way through an MOU, that we thought would be a little bit more binding, but now is sort of, it kind of got like the air taken out of it, because of this new law, AB 1284. So it's really just like new news to Grayton about this circumstance. So I think you're right. We will probably have to send another letter to Secretary Crowfoot. I appreciate that advice. I think that's probably the way to go.
Yeah. Megan, do you have anything you want to add?
A couple of things. Thanks, Chair. So Buffy, to your question about does the policy and the tribal stewardship policy and toolkit, is it going to have a scenario where Secretary Crowfoot designates the Deputy Secretary for Tribal Affairs automatically? And then you also asked, does it eliminate the opportunity for tribes to directly approach leadership like Secretary Crowfoot, the governor, etc.? I would say no. And this is actually something that we specifically point to in our draft tribal consultation policy as well, which I know is a little later next on the agenda. But I don't think anything in the stewardship policy or CNRA's draft tribal consultation policy would ever take away a tribe's right to directly approach leadership or request certain people to attend, right? I think we're still trying to sort through a way to design a policy and toolkit that is, to your point, Chair, going to benefit multiple scenarios, right? Without being overly prescriptive. So to that end, yes, would really love and welcome input on the policies and the tools and toolkits that come out of the policies and guidance. And if anyone has examples that you all like and you're like, this is great, this worked so well, please send them to me and or Deputy Secretary Thompson. But at the end of the day, no, neither of these policies should take away the right that tribes have as sovereign nations to approach leadership. And that's something we emphasize in the consultation policy of having the appropriate staff present in a meeting from the state side. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And the only other thing before we move on, Buffy, is I think it really works well to agree on how often you're going to meet with the agency or the department to do those progress checks and to, it's very easy to begin the process and then not get any feedback or have any communication for several months. And it's like, oh my gosh, where are the milestones we talked about? So just setting those milestones in the conversation and documenting them with next steps of how often the need is to meet to move the co-management forward and to not let it fall by the wayside.
Agreed. Thank you.
Any other tribal leaders or representatives that would like to share any stories or where you're at with co-management? Okay, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Buffy. I think it really benefits everyone. Do we want to ask for any further comment, Melissa, or are we fine to move on to item number 3?
Just checking here in the room to see if anyone wants to comment on that agenda item, and they're shaking their heads no. So unless we have anyone online, I'm not seeing any hands raised, although I will let folks know, again, a reminder, if you want to contribute to a conversation and that's not a natural entry point, feel free to raise your hand in Zoom using that raise hand function. If you're on the phone, I believe it's *6 to raise your hand. *9, I'm sorry, *9 to raise your hand. And then we have staff that are tracking that to make sure that we give you an opportunity to chime in and contribute. So I don't have any hands raised in Zoom at the moment. So if you'd like to move on, we can move to item 3, the agency's draft tribal consultation policy.
Yes, please, Melissa, go ahead and introduce that. And maybe we'll get Megan to share a little bit after you do the introduction.
Absolutely. And a big thanks to Megan for being with us today. Appreciate it. So agenda item 3 is the California Natural Resources Agency draft tribal consultation policy. This is an update on that and an associated document. It's an appendix for best practices guide that is both are currently available for public comment and tribal consultation. So like many state agencies in 2011, 2012 time period, we adopted tribal consultation policies to advance Governor Brown's executive order. And many of us have not updated our tribal consultation policies since then. So Natural Resources Agency is one of those organizations. And so that agency has been engaged in a process for updating its policy. It's also all of so the Natural Resources Agency oversees around 30 other state natural resource related agencies, such as the California Fish and Game Commission, California State Parks, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Coastal Commission, et cetera, et cetera. And each of us has a tribal consultation policy, many of which need to be updated. And what we collectively decided to do was to have the Natural Resources Agency advance its policy update first. And that would allow then all of the other agencies to hopefully use that policy as the foundation for their own individual policies. In part, to recognizing that California's tribes are under a tremendous amount of have a tremendous number of requests coming their way on a daily basis. And to have 30 plus agencies all approaching saying, we're updating our tribal consultation policy, would you please review, is not a very effective way to advance or efficient way to advance that effort. So we have been working with the agency to revise their policy first, and then each of us can either use that policy directly and or use it as the foundation for our own. So recognizing that a lot of laws and executive orders have been enacted since that time frame, a lot of changes to these policies, needless to say, are necessary. The agency also had stated early on that it wanted to ensure that its policy better reflected its intentions and goals for its work with California's tribes and tribal communities and broader collaboration among those entities. So agency went through some early and secondary rounds of tribal consultation in 2024 and early 2025. Those consultations included some roundtable discussions and individual discussions. And using that, they updated the tribal consultation policy. They then, in addition to updating the tribal consultation policy, they also added an appendix. And that's what's called a draft tribal consultation best practices. A lot of that is really more internally focused to state agencies and how we go about, as agencies conducting our work. For instance, what are the different classifications or at what level of an agency should consultation take place, that sort of thing. Both of those documents are open for public comment at this time. Agencies requested the comments be submitted by July 1 of this year. So we have just about 2 months remaining. And if there are any questions or additional suggestions or comments that you would like to submit on that policy and or the best practices guide, the resources agency address for that email is tribalaffairs@resources.ca.gov. Again, that's tribalaffairs@resources.ca.gov. And then once agency again has adopted its policy, we, like other agencies, have held off on updating ours. Ours is desperately in need of updating. And so we're looking forward to the completion of this process so that tribal committee can go back and begin looking at the commission's tribal consultation policy and updating that document based on this work. So I'd like to invite Megan if you have anything to add to that, but I know she's also available for questions.
Nothing to add. Thank you for that wonderful summary. I wish I could have taken you with me all the times I gave the spiel. That was splendid, but happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Megan. Any comments or questions? Has anyone had a chance to really dig into it? I think super important that we do take it to our leadership and that we really weigh in, especially from the perspective of people that are working on co-management projects like Buffy and Megan and Rick and all of us. I think it could really, really be helpful to bring up specific examples like Buffy shared today.
If nobody else, Chair, I have a couple of comments about it. And just to share, we participated in, I think 1 or 2 of the workshops and consultations. I think, some of the things that continue to confuse us about a lot of this work is, who within each agency or department have real decision-making authority. Because we know that tribal liaisons are really facilitators, but oftentimes on a lot of these issues, we may not have, you know, the actual deciders in these meetings, and that's hard to achieve because most of the time those decision makers are, you know, probably Secretary Crowfoot, or in the instance of state parks, Armando or Director Bonham. So, you know, it doesn't really, I guess, you know, really drill down on how, you know, step by step, how to get to real decision makers. And then even if you get to real decision makers, what is the process for delivery of a response? Like, there are no timetables associated really with every step along the way. And so what, you know, our hope was, is we were advocating for updates to consultation policies, is start to put really some commitments, you know, and requirements for staff at the state to act and respond and do it, you know, in a manner that, you know, delivers us actual decisions that we can rest on and feel like not just that we got heard, but we're actually, you know, moving our work forward. I mean, we've kind of been stuck in this land, you know, on a lot of initiatives that, you know, sort of just, you know, hang out there for a long, long time. And, you know, unless you have, you know, political clout, you know, it's how are you really going to get movement on stuff that could be super beneficial statewide. So those were kind of the things that we were hoping to see. And I think it's a strong policy. It's gotten better. And so I do appreciate that, you know, the deputy secretary, I think, took all of that into the policy. I think though these are still some of the gaps that I'm seeing in this. And I think the other piece related to, like, what's the difference when you engage, when you start an initiative at the state level and you're doing workshops, versus, and then you're going to do the consultations one-on-one, you know, what are the products, or what can tribes expect as the work products for workshops? You know, are you going to do summaries? You know, I just got, I did a government to government with another state entity within CNRA, and they hit me with a survey to fill out on, you know, how I want my consultation, you know, summary to be, you know, identified publicly. Like, now I have to fill out a survey with this one division. I mean, that is just, to me, there's no consistency across the board. Like, why do you feel like you need to summarize my government to government communication across the state of California? Where is that written as a requirement? You know, policy should really direct how every division is going to do this same thing over and over again. And workshops are very much different. We go to workshops to chat about an issue, share our thoughts and concerns. Absolutely, take a summary. Not an issue with that. You know, that is already, like, I'm going to be sitting in the room like this with 25 other people. Go ahead and summarize it. But my government to government should not be shared. But there's no commitment, you know, and even in this policy, it's not clear how we're going to do that.
Thank you, Buffy. Excellent points. Any other comments on the CRMA consultation, tribal consultation policy? The deadline, Megan, for comments is July 1?
Correct. Yes.
Are there any other webinars or informational presentations that will happen between now and then?
No, Chair. We've already entered into kind of two 90-day rounds of consultation early, and then to get thoughts on the draft that was compiled after early consultation. So the plan for next steps, I think, is to try to finalize this around fall. I can't, speaking of commitments, I can't commit to a specific date, but we're really aiming for fall timeframe so that the other agencies, CNRA departments can get going on their kind of addendums or individual tribal consultation policies sooner rather than later.
I think Buffy makes a very strong point, and I hope you really do carry that back to leadership, if you would, please. The consistency amongst departments and agencies is just crucial. And it really helps to build that trust in those relationships.
Heard and understood. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Buffy.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and move on to item number 4. Tribal subsistence definition and related management mechanisms. And we want to do a robust discussion today about potential tribal subsistence definition. And as you know, we've worked on this for a few years and made very little progress. We did try to do an ad hoc committee that met separately from the tribal committee, and that didn't seem to work well. I think there was some discussion, and I think there was possibly some good notes and takeaways, but I think really what came out of that is everybody had a little bit different opinion, which is good. But in order for us to move forward, I'm looking for your input today and ongoing throughout the year for your tribe. Do you want to define, do you want to begin to define, or does your leadership want to begin to define what subsistence means to you, a tribal subsistence definition? Because I believe, like with the co-management, we can build on that. And it takes forever to build something. So if we can come up with a very succinct definition that we can agree on, then I believe the commission will approve it. And I believe then Natural Resources, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and a lot of other agencies will get behind it. So, just sharing the one from Alaska, the definition of subsistence, customary and traditional uses by rural Alaska residents of wild renewable resources for direct personal or family consumption as food, shelter, fuel, clothing, tools, or transportation, for the making and selling of handicraft articles out of non-edible byproducts of fish and wildlife resources taken for personal or family use. And I don't think that is what we need, but it goes on to personal or family consumption for barter or sharing, for personal or family consumption and for customary trade. And that is United States Code Title 16, Section 3113. So that's what Alaska did. But we're looking at California and California federally recognized tribes. And I'm looking at something that would help each tribe to begin to build their own ordinances and regulations that could be brought forward to the department and the Fish and Game Commission. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we move forward.
So a reminder for anyone on Zoom, if you are interested in contributing to this conversation about a potential tribal subsistence definition, please feel free to raise your hand, or since no one is speaking at the moment, feel free to just speak up.
Hey, Jackie, this is Rick.
Hi, Rick.
Hi, I can't find the raise your hand.
You're good. Go ahead.
Are you thinking, if I heard you right, have each tribe come up with a definition that best suits, you know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to, you know, go on record today, but, you know, maybe it would help if I read the definition of co-management. It's actually, one long sentence. A collaborative effort established through an agreement in which two or more sovereigns mutually negotiate, define, and allocate amongst themselves the sharing of management functions and responsibilities for a given territory, area, or set of natural resources. One big sentence. So I'm looking, my thought, and I'm open to any other thoughts, is to try and capture something that's very succinct, that allows us the flexibility for each tribe to build what they believe, you know, what subsistence is. We all do it, you know, tribal families, we gather and we do have subsistence lifeways and practices. So what does that look like for your tribe? Any thoughts on that?
Again, Rosa?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'll just advocate support for this continuing to be worked on. As you know, many of you guys know, this was something that's been raised for many, many years. And the value of having a definition so that we can sort of rethink the framework and the way the state thinks about resource management and gets out of just a commercial and recreational mindset. I do think that there needs to be a definition, but that it needs to be also supported by sort of jurisdictional authority. And I think Jackie did mention that with federal recognition and having that status. So it really supports, again, that jurisdictional authority and the recognition through that. In terms of a process of how we go about this, you know, I've always been kind of two minds with this, and so I don't really have a clear recommendation. I think sometimes these public forums are sometimes not a super comfortable place to have certain conversations, but I also know the value in having a process that's transparent enough so when it goes through a state process like the commission, they feel confident in how it's been developed. So I know that's a really ride the fence sort of recommendation, but I do think it's going to probably take a concerted group of people to really, you know, sit down and think this through in a way that maybe happens a little bit between meetings, but then is shared publicly in this more transparent process. That's the tribal committee. But I do just want to, like I said at the beginning, really voice support for the importance of this topic. Because it's really necessary to, again, rethink the way the state manages in a more equitable way with tribes.
Jackie, if I may. Oh, go ahead, Buffy.
Just maybe wanted to add to what Megan was referring to as that long process alongside of this. We've been advocating for a long time with the water boards, that type of use. I feel like, you know, on that end of the spectrum, it's about getting water quality monitoring at a place where we feel safe actually consuming and harvesting, all of the things. So we were successful in getting those designations. The North Coast, has had them. We're still, advocating with water boards in each of our districts, on how to actually apply those to the basin plans. But I think, we could take some of that momentum right now that's happening at the water boards. They have a definition already. And, I just encourage, I guess, taking what successes we've already got at the table within this arena and continuing to try to move that forward. There's what they call the tribal subsistence fishing already defined and agreed to in 2017 by the State Water Board. But I think we're all kind of talking about the same things, which is making sure that we actually not just, we're the Native Americans of California, but we actually have rights associated with that and able to care for and steward and be responsible for maintaining those. And actually part of that is consuming those. And, that's the exercise of our cultural rights.
Buffy, that's amazing. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, it's been a hard fought battle with the water boards, and I don't know if Megan can talk to that anymore, but it's sort of been very siloed as a process, but has kind of, we have a working group across the state of different areas where we come together monthly, I think, and talk about the movement within each area.
Is that Department of Water Resources or State Water Resources Control Board?
It's the State Water Resources Control Board.
Okay. And is that definition public?
Yeah, it's actually on their website.
That would be wonderful if you would share that in the chat.
Sure.
And maybe read it if you don't mind, real quick.
Yeah. Let's see. Uses of water involving the non-commercial catching or gathering of natural aquatic resources, including fish and shellfish for consumption by individuals, households, or communities of California Native American tribes to meet needs for sustenance. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a really good place to start. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Rick, go ahead.
I was just going to throw out some other considerations as far as cultural sensitivity. If the Fish and Game or whoever monitors co-manages, they're going to want data, how many and where at and all that kind of stuff. And that has to be a consideration, I think, of gathering spots and, tribal areas that they don't necessarily want to put in a data bank where it goes in to be studied or collected, in books and stuff. And the enforcement should be co-managed. And I think if there's any enforcement action or requests for more information or anything that are above and beyond tribal sovereignty, it goes to a tribal court to be handled, for lack of a better term. I'm just thinking out loud of, if we can get to a spot where tribes can issue subsistence permits or however that mechanism is, handed out to tribal members or groups that the tribe want representing for collection for the community or tribal members.
Really good points. Really good thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and piggyback off that a little bit. I think that's where we have to be really careful about this isn't an opportunity for the state to regulate those uses. It's ideally creating a space where they're acknowledged, and then through a co-management agreement or some other mechanism, the state sort of recognizes the tribe as managing their own citizens and those resources. So that's the thing I think we just have to be kind of careful about, which is the interesting thing about the water resources definition in my mind is it's acknowledging something exists, and under their authority, they have to make sure water quality is good enough to support that, but they don't get into like wanting to know what that is or even determining whether or not a tribe can do it under state law or not. And so I think that's a really nice sort of balance they've struck that we should be kind of mindful of here too. I don't think tribes are looking to define this so the state then can regulate citizens' use in this way and share data and stuff like Rick mentioned.
Yeah, no, totally agree, Megan. So the problem is I cannot be on a working group call because it constitutes a quorum if I'm in the room, and it has to be a public meeting. So in order to work on the definition of subsistence, tribal subsistence, I need you all to hold some tribal caucuses and maybe move things forward that way. And I'm wondering if I can get a volunteer to coordinate that and maybe do a few calls like once a month or something to really, maybe put aside a couple of hours to work on that. And then report back at the next tribal committee. And when is our next tribal committee? Melissa, is it August?
Yes, it's the Tuesday just before the commission meeting, which I believe is August 16th.
12th.
Oh, 12th, 13th?
Oh, the commission meeting is 13, 14.
13, 14. Okay, yeah, so tribal committee is on August 12th.
And will that be in Sacramento, Melissa?
It is, yes.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is May, so June and July, if there could be maybe 2 meetings before that next 2 working group caucuses, before that next tribal committee meeting, maybe we could have a think tank and some ideas that we share at that point. How does that sound?
Well, Chair Hostler-Carmison, while people are thinking about that question, we have someone here in the room who would like to contribute to the conversation.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Melissa. My name is Keith Rutsard. I'm with the Giant Kelp Restoration Project, and I just wanted to chime in a little bit about the subsistence fishing. I think it's something we definitely need to establish. There's a need for that, and I think there is something I'm thinking about in my space, because we're trying to restore kelp, but we don't fit into the normal kinds of take, right? Like, it's not commercial because we're not selling it, and it's not necessarily recreational because it's not for immediate consumption. So we want to establish a regenerative fishery where we remove urchins and grow kelp and make everything boost the fisheries by doing that. And we're going to make another definition of take. It sounds like a heavy lift, but that would be also a good opportunity, I think, to further your goals here of having subsistence take and for tribal and tribes and tribal communities to have subsistence and ceremonial take as a recognized type of take in California. So I don't know all the mechanisms about how to go about doing that, but it seems like you guys can find ways. So, yeah, that's my comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith. We appreciate your kind thoughts and good words. Any other comments or thoughts? So if I do have a volunteer to send out a meeting invitation to the folks here today, would you be willing to dedicate like an hour, hour and a half, maybe in June and one in July, and try and move this forward a little bit?
Just one question. I think in terms of the process, I'm trying to figure out, I guess, where do we go? Or is it similar to the co-management definition? Like it just gets presented, we adopt it? Is that what you're thinking?
I'm thinking it's gonna take a lot of going back and forth between tribes and to tribal councils. And even though I'm asking to come up with some possibilities or even more thoughts about how to do it, how to build that framework, I'm thinking if we can have 2 tribal caucuses before the next tribal committee. And there could be more thought, not just on the spot put into it, but for instance, my staff could join and could make recommendations based on what our council thinks. You know, and if we could, talk to our councils about what do you think it should mean, and what are we, willing, or what does council want to do? Because it is the coordination and the management of tribal members within your tribe. So I'm kind of looking at it from the point of view that it is something we want to move forward with, but we've got to go to our tribal councils and have discussions.
Okay. I'm kind of in the same boat. This hasn't really popped up outside of our beneficial use discussions, and the things that Megan spoke to are some of the still compounding issues, even in that discussion about how much information you give up,
Right.
how to regulate and whatnot. I'm kind of where I was landing is talking with our tribal beneficial use coordinators and see if they're interested, or if there's recommendations from that group to pull into this and try to do something that, gives this life again. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be helpful, Buffy.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts, Megan?
About what? Sorry, about meeting?
The subsistence, like process for bringing tribes together and landing on an actual definition.
Yeah, I mean, I think the route taken with the co-management vision was pretty good, because there was sort of that balance, right? But it did sort of take 1 or 2 people to spearhead that.
Yeah.
And while I think it's really important, I don't know that I'm volunteering for that either.
I'm going to volunteer other people. That's my goal.
I just need to know if you guys would be on a call.
Yeah, I'm game. I'm definitely game.
Yeah, if somebody else was coordinating the call, and we have leaders like you all that can get the conversation going, and then join more people to that call, but at the same time be talking to your tribal councils about what this means and what the impacts are, because that's where we left off. I've been out of the office with some medical leave over the last few months, so I haven't been at the last 2 Fish and Game Commission meetings, but I am back and doing really well. So my goal is to move this forward this year. I'm not saying we'll finish it this year, but I'd really like to move it forward. So we want to be really thoughtful and careful, as all three of you are saying, Rick, Megan, and Buffy. We don't want to do something just to do it. We want it to be meaningful and we want it to work. So I think I can talk someone into doing the coordination for the calls.
Okay.
Jessica is smiling. Not it.
Not it.
Well, then Ron will think it. I know he will. All right. Thank you all. I appreciate the conversation. Any other comments from other attendees in the room? Janine, any thoughts?
Oh, I was just wondering if you were hoping that an independent person would coordinate this, or if the Fish and Game Commission staff would coordinate it, and also just logistics, like making sure there's a Google folder or a Google document to accompany that. And if your staff were already overworked and you wanted your consultant to step in and do that, your consultant would be willing to do that.
Good points. Melissa, would staff be attending the working meeting or the tribe? If it's a tribal caucus, then the state would not be part of the meeting. If it was a working meeting, then staff could be part of the meeting. Is that correct?
I think that depends on you and the participants of the work group, or the folks who are meeting. Certainly staff would appreciate the opportunity to be present, just to understand the evolution and the direction you're heading, and if there's information that we can help gather, or if there's any limitations that we can share with regard to what the commission can and can't do, those sorts of things. At the same time, if you know, it's a tribal caucus and tribes want to have a conversation and then come back and have a separate conversation, that works as well. It's whatever is going to work best from your perspective and for the folks who are participating.
Yeah, I think I would recommend doing the tribal caucusing first and then coming back maybe in August with some thoughts from the tribal caucus meetings, and then decide if it's time to go ahead and do a working group meeting. So, you know, having two calls, one in June and one in July, having that tribal caucus with just tribal reps in the room. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay. Is that good? Rick, Megan, I see Buffy nodding.
Yeah, that sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Lovely. Thank you so much. All right. So let's go ahead and move along to the commission policy on naming installations. And I don't know if you're prepared to bring this up on the screen, Melissa, but I think it would be helpful if we can.
Yes, I can absolutely do that. So let me do a quick introduction and then I will bring up the document. So this is the commission policy on naming installations. This is a conversation that's been ongoing for a bit of time. This is, I think, the third iteration of this policy, draft revised policy. It's part of a broader effort that the commission has undertaken. The commission has over 60 policies that guide the work of the commission, as well as the Department of California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And a number of those policies are outdated and in need of refinement or revision. In some cases, the commission chose to abolish those policies. A lot of work still to remain. we were hindered in part by our staffing situation, which has improved. And so our hope is to be able to return to these with a little bit more vigor in the second half of this year. In the meantime, we did continue with this particular policy as just trying to get this one completed since we were so far along the pathway of the reviews and consultations and such. And so this policy is called, it's the naming installations policy. It's very old. It was established back in the 1940s, I believe, or maybe in the early 50s. And it was really back at a time when the department and the commission had literally not too long beforehand been bifurcated. So for many years, the policy, the commission and the department were one entity. And it wasn't until sometime in the early 1900s that those two were separated. And so the commission was very much involved in the naming of the different types of installations, whether that was on land, a protected area, maybe it was in water, maybe it was a boat, it was a underwater manned device, all sorts of things that the commission was engaged with at that point with the department. And over time, of course, the responsibilities of the two agencies have evolved and become much more distinct. So your staff, in working with our colleagues at the department, looked at this policy and said this, as written, was appropriate for the 1940s or 50s. It's not so appropriate today, given the role of the two agencies. And so the staff, again, consulting with our colleagues at the department, are recommending that this policy be renamed the Naming Protected Areas Policy, because that is an area specifically where the commission does have direct responsibility and does engage in naming individual properties. So in the meeting materials, you'll see item 5.1 is the policy with the proposed edits. And I need to make my page a little bit smaller so I can fit it on the screen. And then I'm going to share this. Okay, so hopefully everyone on the other end can see the one page, the strikeout, and it's a little messy, but it's in strikeout and underline. The strikeout, of course, means that's to be eliminated. Underline means to be added. And so you see at the top, it was previously naming installations policy. We're recommending it be renamed naming protected areas policy. The most significant, two really significant changes. The first is, again, the commission's not involved in hatcheries, it's not involved in game refuges, etc., but it is involved in ecological reserves, marine protected areas, wildlife areas, and such. So that's the first major change in the first paragraph. And then the second piece is the naming of MPAs. This was what was previously section 2, which you see in the strikeout there. We're suggesting the underlined portion just above it as the new language. The old language was added, I believe, back in like 2011, 2012. Oh, I'm sorry, it's right there, amended. May of 2012. So May of 2012, it was amended to add this language. There was a huge push by members of the public to ask the commission to rename some MPAs using the names of individuals. So this policy was updated to reflect what are the criteria that will be used for that purpose. In the interim, commissioners have been uncomfortable with some of the proposals for renaming specific areas, and led to a conversation about removing that old section 2 and no longer using the names of individuals within the name of a protected area, and instead either using geography and or and historically the tribal name that historically been used by tribes. or both. And so it could include not only the geography, but also a tribally identified name. And so that's what the language in section 2 is reflecting now, the underlying portion, to rename, inviting tribes to identify a name, and then prioritizing those tribally identified names. Those are really the two major changes to the policy. The commission asked that we bring this back to the tribal committee one more time, and then come back to the commission, and we'll come back in August to the full commission with any feedback or input that we receive today on what's currently being proposed.
Thank you, Melissa. I would love to hear any feedback. I think it is really tremendously improved, and agree with not naming it for any person living or dead. I think, and the coordination with the tribe in that area, or multiple tribes, I think is super important. Is very succinct and straightforward with the deletions and corrections. So I recommend moving it forward to the commission, but I want to hear from you today and the tribal representatives. Has everyone had a chance to see it?
Yeah, it's in the meeting materials. I also would note that Chair Hosser Carmison, that you did receive a supplemental public comment related to this agenda item. And actually the author of that comment is here in the room with us, and when the time is appropriate, would like to speak to it.
Okay, let's go ahead and hear that now.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'm so glad you're feeling better. We missed you here in Sacramento at these Fish and Game Commission meetings. So glad you're feeling better now. My name is Keith Rootsard. I'm with the Giant Kelp Restoration Project, and I wrote a letter to this to the Fish and Game Commission, and I also put it into the written comments here at the Tribal Committee. And then I added a supplemental comment with some revised language that was my attempt to redefine this for that. But the way I kind of backed into this was there was a petition by the divers at Catalina Island at Avalon Park to name the Avalon Dive Park after Bill Bushing, who it was a very beloved person there who lived on the island for 45 years and got lots of people into diving, and they called him Dr. Bill, and he died, and they wanted to rename the park after him, but it was not allowed for the only reason that he hadn't been deceased long enough. It had to have been 5 years, and it had not been long enough. So I'd like, regardless of whether they would like to apply again, it seems like you're kind of taking away from the divers that wanted, everyone petitioned, they wrote letters, there's 14 pages of people wanting to support that, and they would not have that ability in the future. And there's also in the meeting materials too, that we already have 3 NPAs that have names that are named after people. And it said as an option for how you implement this would be to remove those names from those marine protected areas. And I don't think that's really a good idea, in that it casts aspersions on these people that are our heroes. One of them is in Monterey, is the Edward F. Ricketts State Marine Conservation Area. And Ed Ricketts, famous guy. I mean, he went on the Western Flyer with John Steinbeck. He's a local hero. He wrote the Between Pacific Tides. This is like the ancestral document about how the on species, marine species, that everyone kind of references. And the other one is Julia Platt, who was a local hero in Pacific Grove, who made beach access at when they put up a gate at Lover's Point. We're not going to allow people in there anymore. She was the mayor of Pacific Grove, and that place is named after her. The third one is the Robert Crown Park. It's a very small park on Alameda Island, which is an ex-naval air station. And it's very small. It's only 2.5 miles long, and it's just on the coastline. It's not much of a place, but he was 6-time elected representative for that area, and this is the way they honored him. And you know, I think that the contributions of people matter. You know, like Melissa, you have a sense of voting matters. Individuals make a difference, and that's what I think in this time when we have a lot of you know, everything's kind of just top-down chaos right now with the federal government, and we need to try to find a way for individuals to rise above that and to make a difference, and to know that, yeah, if you're our hero, then we can name a place after you. And I understand maybe there's a reluctance that maybe this person that you nominate for a place, you may find out in the future that there was something kind of bad that they did in the future, and you might want to take it back. But these people that are already there, you should not take them back, because they are outstanding individuals. We don't want to cast aspersions. If you went to a place and it was no longer named after a person, then you would say, well, what did they do, right? When they dragged down the Saddam Hussein statue, right? Like, yeah, they did something wrong to deserve to have their name taken off of that place. But I think nowadays with the internet and everything, like 5 years is probably sufficient to know whether that person has some sort of a criminal past. And I added, I don't know if you have it here, but I added to the language that we shouldn't name places after someone who's convicted of felony. You know, I think that's kind of basic, a qualification for a place. So, and I would love for the tribal communities to come together and name an NPA that is of our origin, because we are recommending in our petition to the Fish and Game Commission to make a new marine protected area in Monterey. I called it the Tankers Reef as a working title. But I think it would be a good place for Indigenous people to have a place name for that. And I don't know what it is. I don't know who to consult about that. That could come together on that. But I think that would be a great way to recognize that place and get it part of the normal speaking of how people recognize this place. So I welcome people to do it. And maybe you want to name it after a local Indigenous hero for that same place. So I want to make that open to the tribal consultation as well. That's all. Thanks.
Keith, I really appreciate and feel your sincerity and passion about this topic. I believe that there has also been a lot of controversy in certain situations where people feel otherwise. And I know we'll never be able to please everyone, but in my opinion, moving this forward to not have protected areas named after people, but to defer to the tribal original name, defer to that if there is a desire to do that, or have it be a geographical name. I think that really does take it to where we need it to be. Melissa, can you share any more on that, on the folks working on this policy, what their thoughts and feelings were?
I'm not sure that there was much feelings about the policy as much as a recognition that even this individual that, you know, the proposal had come forward to rename an MPA after this individual, beloved by many people. And yet there was also a contingency of stakeholders who came forward and said, no, we are very much opposed to this MPA being named after this individual, and they had their own rationale. And so it sort of pitted one stakeholder group against the other about what you name this place. And that's what in part led to the commission directing staff, you know, please go back, take a look at this. see if there's another way that we should, perhaps be approaching this. We're concerned about naming after people. We had at least 2 commissioners that very directly said, please, I'm asking if we could remove that language, and what would that look like? And that's when, again, staff working with our colleagues at the department, we said, it makes sense to still remain focused on geography, because typically, people will recognize that readily. That was part of the planning, NPA planning process as well, many years ago, was that to the extent that we could use geographical names that are well recognized, makes it easier for the public to identify where that NPA is located. But also, to the extent that, my family, even though we've been in this country for nearly since the country of the United States was founded, we're relative newcomers, right? There is a group of people that lived here first for millennia, and they had names for places long before we arrived. So that was what, in part, we were trying to reflect with the proposal to consult with tribes in the area and potentially identify tribal names. And as we've done in the South Coast, perhaps it's a combination of a geography that's well recognized now combined with a tribal name, or maybe it's one or the other. But again, trying to be responsive to the concerns that were raised by the commissioners, and specifically naming after individuals, no matter how much they're beloved. We had a great example of where there really was a division amongst people about that individual. Not that the individual is necessarily a bad person, but that they had their reasons why they didn't want to name back to that individual.
I appreciate that background so much. Thank you, Melissa. Buffy, please.
Thank you. I am super excited and happy that this is moving forward. I think that, our former secretary, Deb Holland, had created a movement, and I feel like these are steps, to try to, continue that momentum that occurred when, the US government, took a stand at, using offensive, derogatory terms and allowing that permission to continue. And I, like you, Chair, I appreciate the public's perspective about, this, but I think, what we've learned over time is to be very cautious about, uplifting individuals by name, and really it is a safer space to utilize and give deference to the ancestral tribes and those names and use of the language systems of each of our territories. The only gap, I guess, that I sort of see in it, I like it as a policy. I'm not quite sure in your guys' world, I guess, how you would have staff go through a process of engaging in tribal consultation when you are ready to name something, how that would work. I would only just encourage that to be further spelled out. One of the things that kind of went in many directions on the Central Coast was, the feds naming, a sanctuary, trying to be consistent with, traditional naming and that whole approach. And, from my understanding, got a little sideways in how best to actually implement that action, and at what point do you have tribes come together to land on, what is an appropriate name, and find consensus and agreement. I think those are sort of the subtleties that we all deal with. that become more challenging for us. We don't really think about it when we're creating policy, but, we certainly would, do better with procedures on how to work through those, discussions. So I applaud this move and definitely encourage it continuing to move forward.
Thank you so much, Buffy. Anyone else? Megan, Rick, Kevin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I can just add to what Buffy said. Agree that this is a great direction. There is some nuance here, I think, that you need to think through in terms of, I think it's important that the tribes on whose ancestral lands those are the tribes that should be involved in that conversation and the language of that place. So just if there's some refinement to make sure that you're picking up on that nuance there. And then obviously I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't really mention geographical reference either in that section. It references it above, but I would just sort of emphasize that again so that isn't lost, that really is the intent in section 2 as well.
Thank you, Megan. Rick, any thoughts? Kevin, we haven't heard much from you. Any thoughts to share? I'm going to go to, in the room here with me, I'm going to go to Janine.
Thanks. Just two quick ones. I've been following a writing protocol of capitalizing tribes. I'm referring to California tribes, so I don't know if that's something that needs to be taken up in this document. And then secondly, is there active consultation with the tribal liaison for the California Advisory Committee on Geographic Names? Because they've been going through all of this with the renaming of every location that had the offensive SQUAW. So they've been going through this for about a year or so.
And who is that?
I'm trying to recall. I'll look into it, but there is a specific person on that committee who is in charge of liaising with tribes.
Okay.
And may have some things.
And they're in charge of, in California, of going through places.
So the California Advisory Committee on Geographic Names is the state body that overviews nomenclature changes and then recommends them to the U.S. Board on Geographic Names. And the only reason I know this is because we've had a lot of back and forth about naming and renaming places in Lake County.
Okay.
And during that process, so there's a whole process, and the meetings are held at the CNRA headquarters in Sacramento. And as part of that process, they have different committee members who are assigned to working through renaming locations. And there is also a person, one of their board members, who specifically works with tribes anytime there is a tribe or tribal community associated with that name change. So it would just make sense that this effort was connected with that body, and I just didn't know if that was happening.
Thank you so much. I wasn't aware of it. The advisory committee.
Yeah, it looks like Maggie's hand is up.
Megan?
Thanks. Yeah, I could try to answer questions. So you're correct. KAGAN, as we call it, it's a different acronym. The California Advisory Committee on Geographic Names is a committee that's housed within CNRA and serves at the discretion of Secretary Crowfoot. The committee does indeed advise the federal version of it's the Board on Geographic Names, which makes final recommendations for any name proposals to establish a name for an unnamed feature or place or change a name. And right, anyone can apply basically or put forth a name proposal to the federal government. Ultimately, they filter it down to the advisory body, and then the advisory body, because we're within CNRA, right, we uphold our tribal consultation policies and guidance. And so for every single name proposal, we do offer and seek tribal consultation for tribes that may be potentially affected by the name change. And in some cases, tribes do decide to maybe submit a counter proposal to the federal body, and then that is considered. Or in other cases, right, they might object, support, or otherwise be indifferent. But the committee does take all of that into consideration when it makes its advisory decisions. And then, as you mentioned, there was also it's the Assembly Bill 2022 effort, which was this large effort that kind of reached culmination in January of this last year to replace all places and features in the state containing the offensive and derogatory SQ term. And that was through Assembly Bill 2022. If I can answer any other questions, happy to, about the committee.
Thank you, Megan.
Chair, if I
Yes.
could also just piggyback on what Megan was referring to. So TIPOs already play a role in that federal process of reviewing those names. I'm not quite sure if the state system is completely consistent with the process used by the federal government. When I was mentioning the name change in the central area, it was really, I was trying to be very subtle about that. Real inconsistency there with how federal officials really are supposed to acknowledge federally recognized tribes, and especially those with TIPOs, and in carrying out those recommendations and concurrence for geographic name changes. And so you can kind of get sideways when you have policies of a state that try to really offer an extended opportunity outside of Indian tribes. And when you have instances where an Indian tribe does provide input or is the lead on a renaming. And I would, I think to Megan's point, Megan Roach's point on this, particular area, you're going to have a mix of, different tribes, Indian tribes and non-federally recognized tribes who are going to want to weigh in. And those sort of become the points in policy for a lot of debate and discussion. That's the way that we've seen it play out. And so, when I recommend, thinking through procedurally how to handle and manage those instances, that's kind of where I'm coming from is, AB 2022 was really specific to, the SQ word. I think the committee, it sounds like is, a little bit broader. I don't disagree with that, but I also would want to weigh in on how to make this a little bit more clear and focused process for Indian tribes. So as a TIPO tribe, we're not, being diminished when we do offer a name, or that we're in a debate over whether or not our recommendation, because ultimately these do get confirmed by the federal government, and that, then is that trust relationship, with the federal government. And so we have had to do those battles, and, have been successful in getting, the names that the tribe recommends, on federal lands. We have not gotten a large response, in trying to move the needle at the state level on offensive names because they're not SQ. They are uplifting individuals who have enslaved California Indian people. It's well documented, and have made little momentum in trying to achieve change. You know, here locally, even in our state parks, we uplift, you know, General Vallejo, who we know massacred, killed, enslaved, and tortured, especially Indian women and children. And so, you know, those are really kind of the pressing issues of this type of work in this arena. So I'm super supportive because at least this begins to move something forward that is beyond just, I think, what we were handed, you know, by, you know, the federal government's offensive term of SQ. So however we continue to proceed, I definitely support that.
Really great comments and information. Thank you, Janine, for bringing that up. And Melissa, I think the conversation at the full commission should incorporate the discussion about the advisory committee for the California geographic names and how, you know, I really see this policy as critical for the commission, because there's a lot changing with this administration and with the federal agencies right now. So I think it's super important for California and for the Fish and Game Commission to move this forward. I think we need to be aware of the work of that advisory committee, and maybe I'll do personal research and get more information and look at that assembly bill, but really value this conversation. Any comments from anyone else on item 5, commission policy on naming installations? And again, thank you, Keith. I do appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being happy to see me. I'm happy to deal with feedback.
Last time you were here, you just skipped for a moment and then you were gone, and we just missed you. So I'm glad you're back.
Thank you. Okay, Melissa, shall we go ahead and move on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So our next agenda item is item 6, and this is the annual tribal planning meeting. The California Fish and Game Commission has, as we discussed earlier, a tribal consultation policy. As part of that consultation policy, there is a call for an annual tribal planning meeting between the commission and California tribes and tribal communities. And we have not held that meeting the last couple of years. We've had some, as folks are aware, some staffing challenges. And so we are still looking to potentially hold it again this year. And I believe, and one, apologies, because the last time you met, we did commit to sending a letter out to California's tribes requesting input on potential agenda topics. And I came to realize recently that we never sent that letter. So apologies for that. But I also understand that Chair Hoster-Carmison has a potential game plan for how we might move forward with the annual planning meeting and the agenda for that meeting.
I was just brainstorming with Melissa, and I'm sure that tribal representatives and other stakeholders share my concern over the loss of funding opportunities that is being recommended in the 2026 budget. And what I'm wondering is, would it be helpful in this annual tribal planning meeting to have state representatives participate and bring the funding opportunities that will be available as it relates to natural resources, as it relates to co-management, as it relates to the things that the tribes are working on. If if each tribe identified the type of funding that they're looking for, we could really have a tribal summit through this annual planning meeting where we can dig deeper in and identify funding sources in order to move the work forward that we're doing, to not lose our capacity, even if we may be losing federal funding. What's available at the state? What are the things that we can supplement those budgets with? So kind of taking a proactive approach. And I'd like to really consider doing this annual tribal planning meeting in the fall, so we can give agencies enough time to, take a look at their new budgets and, identify what funding may be available in the natural resources arena. So would love your thoughts on that. And Melissa, it depends on staff's workload. I know when, how and when and where we can host the annual tribal planning meeting, but I would love your thoughts.
Yeah, I think holding it in the fall would be, from a staff perspective, if we could do it in maybe late September, that would be great timing. Also, as you say, it gives time to communicate with and work with some of our state agency partners to gather relevant information and identify potential speakers or participants in the meeting to help share that kind of information and answer questions. As far as location, we can obviously, we've been holding a lot of meetings in Sacramento of late, and we'll continue to do that for the foreseeable future until the budget situation changes. But we could also do it via Zoom.
We do have California Native American Day on September 26th. So we probably want to avoid that week because everybody's going to be really hustling and scrambling to make sure everything is done in time for that meeting. But some of the dates that I was looking at include September 8th, 15th, or September 30th. So I can work with staff and you, Melissa, on that and see if any of those dates might work. But I'd love to hear from tribal representatives regarding the focus for the annual tribal planning meeting. And if you have any other thoughts or any recommendations, if that doesn't sound like a good idea, what would you like to see?
I think that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Awesome. I know we're all, extremely concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Megan, Rick, picking on you guys today.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I wonder too, how much sort of progress we can make on the subsistence definition, if there's a space to sort of discuss that and just co-management examples, and like really highlight some specific projects of successes might be good, and around that too, and kind of inspire people as to what's going on, positive things.
Sounds great, Megan. Did I lose Rick, or are you still here, Rick? He may have dropped off.
Yeah, I don't see his name.
Okay, I will work with Melissa and staff, and we'll try and choose a date. At this point, for the folks on Buffy and Megan, anyone else, what does September 8th, 15th, or 30th look like on your calendars at this point?
So Chair Hostler, Emerson, I can tell you right now, the 30th would be particularly problematic for your staff because you have a commission meeting the following week. And so we
Okay.
will be rows of meeting preparation and document preparation for that.
Okay. We'll drop that date.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
What were those dates again?
The 8th or the 15th of September.
So the 8th is it's a national conference that a lot of tribes go to. It's going to be in Reno, Nevada this year. So that it's usually that whole week of the 8th.
Which conference, Buffy?
It's the National Association of TIPOs, but it's
Okay.
a lot of agencies and tribes that aren't necessarily TIPOs also go.
Okay.
But the following week is great.
The week of the 15th?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I could actually do the 15th or the 16th. So Melissa, can we work with those
Absolutely.
tentative dates? And then we'll try and get a meeting invitation out as soon as possible.
And I just want to be sure for those who are involved in planning for California Native American Day, that the 15th and 16th, that's less than 2 weeks prior. Just want to be sure that's not going to interfere with all of that work. I know it's a lot of effort.
I'm feeling like even if we can have a half a day annual tribal planning meeting, it's really worth it because we have missed the previous 2 years. And if we need to go into October, I'll just work with you offline, Melissa, and we'll fine tune it and get back to everyone.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you for your feedback on that. Okay, we're moving into staff and agency updates. And I'd like to welcome and turn it over to Mike Escrow with California Ocean Protection Council. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Chair. Thanks for inviting me. Hi, attendees. A couple of quick updates from OPC. The first is an update on our new strategic plan. We are in the process of developing our 2026 through 2030 strategic plan, and we will be releasing a draft strategic plan at the end of this month in advance of our June 10th council meeting, where we're going to have discussion of the draft with council members. And so please be on the lookout for that. We will be sending out a specific request for tribal consultation on the draft strategic plan. That will unfold over the summer, and we're going to be driving towards adoption of the final strategic plan in December. So yeah, please be on the lookout for an opportunity to consult with OPC on our new strategic plan. And then an additional consultation opportunity that is open right now. So we are seeking tribal guidance and feedback on a new solicitation for tribal cultural resources. It's a funding opportunity within our broader Senate Bill 1 Sea Level Rise Adaptation Grant Program. And so this is specifically geared at supporting tribes in assessing and planning for sea level rise impacts on cultural resources, tribal cultural and natural resources, and ancestral lands and cultural heritage. And so there was a consultation letter that went out on March 28th, and we're requesting that consultation conclude by May 19th. I can put a little bit more information in the chat, but yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Director Jen Eckerly if you'd like to schedule consultation on that funding opportunity. We're really excited about providing some dedicated funding for tribes to be able to adapt to sea level rise. Those are my only 2 updates. Turn it back to you, Chair Hostler-Carmison. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Love to hear about the work that OPC is doing and always being so supportive of building capacity and working with the tribes. And really encourage everyone to get comments in on that strategic plan. Let's go ahead and go to the department. And I believe the lead on that is Sarah Fonseca.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you, Chair. My name's Sarah Fonseca. I am the department liaison for CDFW. We provided actually most of our updates in the meeting materials that are in Exhibit 7A. In those, it provides details, contacts, dates, and links about a lot of things that are going on with us. Just wanted to highlight a few of those before I hand it off to my fellow staff who are here for their different programs. There is an upcoming scheduled tribal listening session. It's for the status review of the Lost River and Short-Nosed Sucker. We actually combine those two into one. So we have a listening sessions for that coming up. So a couple items that happened after we developed the meeting materials. They were initially for the April meeting. We have the Black Bear Conservation and Management Plan that was published recently. And also the Bighorn Sheep Conservation and Management Plan was released. And so those things are not in the meeting materials, but they have been released very recently and we're excited for that. And then as always, just if anyone has questions or if they need help with me connecting you to a program or project or have concerns, just reach out to me and I can help with that. And let's hand it over to AC Stutes for LED.
Hello, Chair, Commissioner, staff. Thank you. Chris Stutes, Assistant Chief in the Law Enforcement Division. Couple updates. One, since we've last met, I promoted to Assistant Chief over the Northern Enforcement District, which many of you know me in this space for my role with LED as the Tribal Coordinator for Law Enforcement Division. But now as the Assistant Chief of Patrol and functions in the North State, that puts me overseeing 23 counties in the North State from Sacramento to Oregon, many of which have a lot of tribal engagement and collaboration. So please keep that in mind. If anybody needs anything, to reach out, not only as the role of coordinator, but also being in charge of those areas. Couple updates also. So up on North Coast, wildlife officers historically have done a few hunter education trainings with the Bear River tribe. They did another one in March, so that was a good update. I think 12 students attended from the tribe, and it was well received. And then just this week, 2 game wardens on the North Coast were invited by the Yurok tribe, managing the condor program, to go out with the tribe and see the condors and work with them and watch the tribe work with the condors. And that was a real positive engagement as well. So that's all I have, just a couple updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Congratulations. Really, really support and appreciate you and the work you do, and really happy for you and your promotion. I hope you still get to have some time off a little bit, but it's really nice to be able to reach out to you if we need you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead.
I was gonna just say, Scott Gardner's not here for wildlife, so those 2 conservation plans were kind of covering the wildlife, but I believe Jay we have on here. Do you have any updates or just everything that was included in the materials?
Yeah, I don't have any additional updates. I tried to get you everything we had, but thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Jay. And then we have Samara here for Marine.
Yeah, good afternoon. Samara Maxey, Regulations and Tribal Coordinator for the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Marine Region. And today we have Joanna Grable here, our Invertebrate Program Manager, who will be giving a presentation on upcoming recreational red abalone fishing closure regulations. And I think she's online, so if you can, I don't know if she's been promoted.
Can you hear me?
It is perfect.
So does someone have the presentation and are we just gonna do screen sharing or how?
We're having a hard time hearing you, Joanna. You're a little muffled.
Okay. Is that any better? Can you hear me, Melissa?
No, you sound the same, actually.
You sound the same.
Okay, let me try. Is that better? No, hang on.
It's a little better, yeah.
All right, we can try that and then we'll interrupt you though, Joanna, if it's hard to hear.
Can we minimize the gallery and increase the size of the presentation, please?
Let's try that right now. Kelsey's working on it right now.
And not show Joanna's video. That makes it easier.
Okay,
There we go.
Okay, can I try this again? Can you guys hear me?
Much better.
No? Yes? No? I
Oh,
can't.
yeah.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
For me,
Messenger?
maybe I didn't share sound too.
Uh-oh.
Share sound.
But there should be sound in the file. Shouldn't make a difference.
No.
Joanna, can you hear
We're
us
on
now?
mute. It's on, our room is on mute.
No,
No, that's not the computer.
everybody else can hear
Oh.
She could hear us before, whatever
Yeah.
she changed. She
Hmm.
couldn't hear
I'm
us.
so
Okay,
Can you hear us now? David, how can you confirm you can hear us in the room?
Hi, everybody. I can hear you on Zoom just fine.
Yeah, so the problems with her.
Okay. I think I'm good.
darn.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear us now,
Yeah.
Joanna? Okay.
Can you hear me?
If you could just speak up a little, because again, you're kind of muffled. It's almost as if your microphone's covered, but I know it's not, because you're on your, it's right there.
No, yeah, exactly.
You have
Okay.
when you go to your Zoom audio and you click on that link, does it show that it has selected your earbuds?
Yes.
It does, okay.
Yeah. I'll just speak really loud. Does that help?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, good afternoon. Thank you for having me this afternoon. My name is Joanna Grable, and I am the Invertebrate Program Manager. So today I will be discussing the red abalone fishing closure. Next slide, please. In this presentation, we will cover the history of the fishing closure, current status of the abalone population, and wrap up with a department recommendation regarding the future of the recreational abalone fishery. Next slide, please. The recreational abalone fishery has undergone several regulation changes over the last 15 years. Prior to 2010, we had unprecedented fishing pressure. In 2011, we had an unprecedented die-off, which was likely due to a harmful algal bloom. And then, of course, around 2014, 2015, we had the large marine heat wave, which created warm water conditions and a loss of hope, which led to starvation conditions and a fishery collapse.
In September 2017, the department identified a dramatic fishery-wide decline of red abalone populations from severe starvation conditions. As a result, the commission adopted regulations to close the recreational fishery. The commission also adopted a one-year sunset provision for the closure based on significant public comments received during the rulemaking process to address concerns of fishery closure for an indeterminate period. At that time, the fishery was scheduled to reopen on April 1st, 2019. In 2018, in another rulemaking, the department had found no meaningful changes in the red abalone resource, which prompted the prior one-year closure. As a result, the commission extended the sunset date for another 2 years. Fast forward in 2020, in yet another rulemaking, the department again found no meaningful change in the abalone resource and recommended extending the sunset date 5 years to 2026. In the initial statement of reasons document, or a regulatory documents for that change, we noted that the red abalone population was not expected to recover by 2026. However, at that time, staff had been engaged with stakeholders to draft the fishery management plan. The fishery management plan was expected to be completed before 2026. And with the FNP adoption, the language pertaining and continuing the current closure was expected to be part of those implementing regulations. And as we know, during that FNP development, we switched gears and started focusing on a recovery plan. So those regulations to continue that closure never were completed. So here we are today, and the fishery is set to reopen on April 1st of 2026, unless action is taken. Next slide, please. Over the next few slides, we'll discuss the status of the red abalone population. We'll cover our density and recruitment information that we've collected from department surveys. And then we'll touch on recent data on kelp, sea urchins, and sunflower stars. Next slide, please. Red abalone density along the Sonoma and Mendocino coast has drastically declined. This graphic depicts data from multiple sites, and this is where the department has our index sites where we've been collecting data over several years now. So the data collected from those locations show a clear downward trend in abalone populations since around 2015. Densities at all monitored locations indicate a significant and sustained population decline. Next slide, please. Recruitment information is collected annually at Van Dam during our annual dive recertification class. This graphic shows the number of the young of year abalone observed in each of our abalone recruitment modules over time. And this is what we can use as an index for recruitment. And as you can clearly see by the graphic here, since that marine heat wave in 2014, we have had several years with very low recruitment. Next slide, please. So switching to kelp. Kelp is an ecosystem indicator. And what we show here is the graphic here on the right of long-term data on kelp in Sonoma in the Northern California area. And as we can see, we have lost over 90% of bull kelp in some areas, and there has been almost no recovery since 2014. So we can really see in that graphic on the right how just dramatically kelp declines after that marine heat wave. Next slide, please. Switching to purple sea urchin, we have definitely seen an explosion in the population. So this graphic shows purple sea urchin densities at those reference sites where we also collect abalone density data. So it's the same locations in the slide I just showed you a couple slides ago. We have seen an unprecedented increase in the density of purple urchins, up to 60 times the historical levels in some locations. And this has been a critical factor in that kelp forest collapse and in the continued collapse of the kelp forest. Next slide, please. The sunflower sea star, Pycnopodia, is a key predator of sea urchins and is vital to maintaining healthy kelp forests. And unfortunately, that species has drastically declined. We only saw 5 individuals observed in California in 2023. And the near disappearance of a crucial keystone predator is just further exacerbating the problem of exploding sea urchin populations and hinders the recovery of kelp forests. Next slide, please. Despite the ongoing moratorium or closure in the recreational fishery, abalone populations have shown no significant recovery. Kelp forests along the North Coast have not rebounded. We're still seeing high numbers of purple sea urchins, and we have not seen a return of the keystone predator, Pycnopodia. Next slide, please. Given the continued decline of kelp forests and the lack of abalone recovery, the department has recommended to continue the current recreational closure indefinitely, which allows time to assess kelp recovery through our KRMP process and to monitor red abalone recruitment for signs of recovery. The MRC has consequently recommended instead to include a 10-year closure. So that would maintain a closure until 2036. And they requested continued work with partners on data collection. Next slide, please. So our timeline for this regulatory package. So we did submit, or we sent out a tribal notification letter in the late March of 2025. And then obviously I'm here today, in which, sorry, the meeting should be updated to May 2025. We plan to go to notice at the October meeting with hopeful adoption at the December Fish and Game Commission meeting. The target effective date is March 31st of 2026, and that will to prevent any lapse in the fishery closure. So we do not want the fishery to reopen or to have to close it. Okay. Next slide. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
So with your, with the slide when you were talking about the Pycnopodia being functionally extinct, do you have an estimate on when the 2024 data will be available, and are those surveys continuing into this year as well?
Just because we're having a hard time hearing Joanna, if I understood correctly, and maybe Samara knows, I don't think there was data collected in 2024.
Yeah, that's the data we have on Pycnopodia are opportunistic sightings that have been reported. So it's not data collected from a department survey.
Okay.
So Joanna, my question is, who are the partners the MRC is recommending to work with to collect data? Because I think it's also important to get to include traditional knowledge. And several of the tribes are collecting data on red abalone as well. So I'm just wondering who those partners are.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. Yeah, so we do. So I guess I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a heads up that we will be going to the Marine Resources Committee meeting in July to have a broader and larger conversation on the help that we need to collect data on abalone. We cannot do this by ourselves. And so we need help from everyone, essentially. And tribes are a very critical and important piece of that. We did start a process for to develop a recovery plan. And through that, we did reach out, because at that point we were looking for putting members together for a technical working group committee and a community working group. And we did reach out, and we're specifically hoping to get some tribal representatives in those spaces. That process, we sort of were unable to go forward on that process, and we'll talk about that and provide an update at the MRC. But essentially, we are looking forward to have conversations and tribal input. We do think that is critical, and we'll be looking beyond red abalone at this point. We would like to start a broader data collection effort that includes all abalone species.
Sorry, we really couldn't understand you at all, Joanna. And what would be very helpful is if you put your headset back on, and if you can't hear our questions, a staff person could type the questions into the chat, because we also had an extreme difficulties understanding your presentation, and we're missing a lot of key information. Can we please do that?
Melissa?
Yeah.
Echoing what Janine just said, it was really difficult to understand the presentation and what Joanna just said. Can we get a staff person to relay for us on our end here? I'm not sure if everyone online could hear it.
And when Joanna was wearing the other device, we could hear her perfectly. But I think she was having a problem hearing us. Therefore, she just put that device back on so we could actually understand the words that are coming out of her mouth. And
yeah,
then
we understand.
Is that any better?
Oh, tremendously.
So could Joanna please repeat everything
I
she
can't.
in relation?
Joanna, say we hear her.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the question then?
When I asked about the partnerships, you said, and it was cutting in and out, that you would be working with partners, and I did hear you say absolutely you want tribes to be integrally involved, but I couldn't understand the partners that you'd be working with to collect data. And then the issue with having all the discussions at the MRC for me is that I can't attend the MRC, but I know I can get minutes from, you know, staff notes from MRC meetings. So I think this is just such a crucial, important topic for us and for tribes that, you know, and all of the, you know, all of the stakeholders and folks who subsist on abalone or, you know, consumptive conservation people, 10-year closure is really scary. So are you going to be bringing this presentation again, or did it already go to the commission?
The MRC. Yeah. So a couple of things. One, the presentation that she gave was similar to what she gave at the Marine Resources Committee meeting in March. And what she was saying when she was trying to answer the question is that she's going to be coming to the July MRC meeting to talk about partnerships, to talk about the fact that the department can't do this work alone, and that it needs to begin reaching out to other agencies, to tribes, to nonprofits, whatever organizations have resources and are potentially already doing some of this kind of work, and collectively coming together to identify how they can be more effective.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And thank you, Joanna. And can we get that PowerPoint presentation?
It should be in your meeting materials.
Okay, wonderful. Any other comments or questions for Joanna?
7.3. Yeah, so exhibit 7.3 is the presentation, the PowerPoint. And Joanna apologizes. She said she doesn't know what's wrong with her audio.
We appreciate you, and we're sorry for your frustration too. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. We have exhibit 7.4, informational update on California's Marine Protected Area Network Decadal Management Review.
Yes, hi Jackie. I think I will just give a quick orientation to the materials for participants to be aware. Before this committee, each meeting, we've brought you an update on progress in the department's review of marine protected area regulation petitions from the public to change marine protected area regulations as part of an adaptive management process. The commission took action on 5 of the 20 petitions at its December meeting, and now the department is in the process of beginning the review process for the remaining 15 petitions. And that does include some tribally either associated, co-led or tribal initiated petitions to change or add MPAs. And I just want to highlight next steps. The document in your materials that exhibit 7.4 provided by the Department Marine Region has a really a good context and background in case participants are not aware of this process. so that you can become quickly oriented, and we welcome you to engage on this effort. Most importantly are the next steps in this. The most of the conversation has been happening at the Marine Resources Committee meetings, which are March, July, and November, or they're happening in front of the full commission, because they're really weedy and nuanced. There's a lot of details and a lot of passionate people that want to speak about it. The phase that the commission is at right now is that they're settling on an evaluation process so that the public can know what to expect, what you're going to see when the department finishes evaluations of individual petitions and all the pieces and parts of each of those petitions. So they presented a timeline at the March MRC meeting, and that was provided to the commission at the April commission meeting. Importantly, that timeline included a July Marine Resources Committee discussion where the department will present its proposed evaluation structure for displaying its, asking inquiries and displaying its assessment of different things, whether it's scientific, other uses, historic practices, or other features, and a recommendation. So July is not talking about individual petitions. It's talking about the standards and the structure for evaluation of those petitions. And that'll get reported to the commission again in August, probably, anticipating a recommendation from the Marine Resources Committee. The next step after that would be department in earnest, working hard on evaluating those 15 MPA petitions and bringing evaluations and potential recommendations to the Marine Resources Committee meeting in November. So that'd be the first time, really talking in depth about individual petitions. The department and commission staff expect to continue to bring updates to the tribal committee meeting without replicating the whole discussion. But I do want to point, in your materials, that not just that 7.4, but also 7.5. That's the presentation that Environmental Program Manager Claire Wagner gave at the March MRC meeting. So from there, I do want to highlight that the department is recognizing that there's broad interest. There's a lot of interest to have a bigger discussion with the whole commission and not just two committee co-chairs. This is similar to your point, Chair Officer Carmison, that the Open Meeting Act precludes you from participating in those meetings despite your strong interest. So staff will be bringing options to the commission for broader commission discussions, possibly a handful of petitions and their evaluations at a time, or other groupings that will be maybe not bite-sized lunches, bite-sized pieces. Maybe they are, full meals, but not the full buffet. So, just in other words, sorry, that's a bad analogy. My point is that we recognize that those 15 petitions have a lot to digest on there.
I thought it was great. That was great, Susan.
Stay tuned on that process, and then share any guidance that you have for us on making sure that tribes are aware of information and timing out that go beyond the tribal committee. We're open, but we will continue to bring information here so that participants and tribes will know how and when to contribute with your important input and feedback.
I actually loved your analogy of bite-sized snacks and pieces instead of the full menu. I think that's how tribes need to receive the information, as well as stakeholders in the commission, because it can be overwhelming, and I know that's been the concern. I haven't been part of those conversations recently, but where I left off was at the commission of the full commission meeting. I was really underscoring my desire to have more of it be discussed in detail at the commission. So really appreciate that. And, really would appreciate the detailed staff notes from the MRC.
I can provide the high level summary, and then happy to share that with you. And of course, if you would like a additional briefing, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan.
We can also share with you the link directly to that conversation piece. You don't have to go to the link for the whole committee meeting. Because we don't do the written summaries anymore. Our meeting minutes are now the videos. And so, but they are divided up by agenda items. So if you wanted to just listen to that one piece, you can do that without having to scan through the whole video.
Appreciate all your hard work. Okay. Shall we move on to Wildlife Resources Committee?
Okay. So just by way of background, in case anybody's not familiar, the commission has 3 committees. The Tribal Committee, of course, is this one that we're in now. The Wildlife Resources Committee and the Marine Resources Committee. You've heard both of them mentioned throughout the meeting. So I will be going over the next meeting of the Wildlife Resources Committee meeting. Of the Wildlife Resources Committee. The meeting is scheduled for May 15th. It will be here in this building in Sacramento. The agenda is online. It's in your meeting materials for this meeting, as well as online posted on our website under our meetings page. So you can get it at either point. The Wildlife Resources Committee has a number of standing topics that we cycle through each year, and we go through and review, regardless of whether they're going to go on to a rulemaking or not. We sort of check in on each one every year so that the department can come and give its thoughts about what they might be working on or thinking about for the coming year as far as regulations go, and also an opportunity for the public to input both to the committee and to the department on ideas or suggestions that they might have. So the first topic that we will be discussing is initial vetting for annual regulation changes. These are rulemakings that we do every year for various reasons. They're all tied to federal processes. That's the main reason why. So waterfowl hunting, Central Valley sport fishing, and Klamath River Basin sport fishing will be our annual regulation changes. Then we'll move on to periodic regulation changes. And that's also 3 topics, upland resident game bird hunting, department lands. That's a new topic for a new commission policy that was, I believe last year, was approved by the commission to include department lands in this cycle so that we do a check-in every year to see what the department is thinking as far as changes and updates to department land regulations. And then big game hunting. And that will include deer, elk, bighorn sheep, pronghorn antelope, and bear as well. So regulations for those big game species. We will move on to take of coyotes. This is a narrowing of the focus from a previous topic, take of non-game mammals. The committee and the commission wanted to just focus on coyotes, and so we will, it's sort of a reset of that topic, and we'll be having a discussion and setting the tone and starting off a discussion of take of coyotes. And then we'll go into our standing topics. We'll have department updates from wildlife branch, fisheries branch, and law enforcement division. And then the future agenda items. And that is the agenda for next meeting on May 15th. That's all for the next week.
In 1 week.
Yes, next week.
Really helpful, Ari. Thank you.
And so, Chair Hostel Carmson, do you want me to move on to the Marine Resources Committee?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So the third committee, the Marine Resources Committee, has two of the 5 commissioners co-chair the Marine Resources Committee. The next meeting will be in July. For reference, in your meeting materials, Exhibit 7.8 has the MRC work plan. And it's organized by kind of categories as well as individual topics. So I do also want to highlight what is in the works for a July discussion. There is overlap with several topics that have been highlighted by individual tribes as well as the tribal committee. And I'm not sure if you were able to hear from Joanna Grable about red abalone, but related to red abalone recovery planning and the need for data, she mentioned, and you, yes, you did hear, but just to reiterate that in July, she'll be bringing a discussion to the Marine Resources Committee about how other individuals and groups can mobilize to collect data that the department is no longer going to be able to collect in the field. And I know they're going to be strongly interested to engage with tribes in that process as stewards, and stewards since time immemorial for this special species. Then there are other species that are fishery species or harvested that will be discussed. There are 2 commercial fisheries. One is California halibut fishery management, and that's related to fishing with trawl gear. So that'll be a discussion and evaluating bycatch in that fishery, as well as commercial coonstripe shrimp fishery. That's a trap fishery. That has undergone emergency measures or changes to reduce the risk of whale entanglement. And so there's going to be a very in-depth discussion about what are the longer term measures to go forward. Also of interest to the tribal committee and tribes, many tribes, has been commercial bull kelp. So we're going to have a few conversations about kelp at the meeting. One of them has to do with just before I go to commercial bull kelp, just what's the status? What do we know about kelp recovery tracking? Like what is new information that's come out in the last full year for 2024 about the condition of kelp beds along the coast, both bull kelp as well as giant kelp, macrocystis. So they'll bring that, have a discussion about planning the development of the kelp recovery and management plan that is anticipated to be completed next year. That's a really important collaborative strategy building document to pursue this daunting task of collectively helping support recovery of bulk health beds in particular. And then finally, the commission had enacted strong restrictions on commercial harvest of bulk kelp for edible seaweed, including closure in 2 counties. That was adopted for a 5-year time period, and the sunset date is coming up. And so they're also going to discuss extending those restrictions for a longer period of time, especially since the kelp recovery management plan is still being developed. Let's see, and then the last thing to highlight is that in addition, the committee will get the update I mentioned about marine protected area petitions and their evaluation process. I do want to note that because that MPA topic takes a lot of, there's a lot of attention and discussion that happens. That MRC meeting will be 2 days. So it will be the first day, which is a Wednesday, if you can look that up for me, the date, please, if you don't mind. But anyway, we'll get, that date is on our website. The first day will be, 16th and 17th. Thank you. The marine protected areas will be on one day. The fisheries and kelp and abalone will be on the other day. So, and also the department gives, and Ocean Protection Council will provide updates at that meeting on other topics. That's it for me.
Thank you, Susan. Busy girl.
Indeed.
Understatement.
Both of us.
Yes.
All of us.
All right, any questions for Susan? Okay. If not, I'm gonna roll into the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Plan, if that's all right.
Yes, please, Melissa.
All right. So I think some folks may be familiar with the fact that the commission is developing a Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Plan. We have a draft that's been posted to our website. We worked on for the last couple of years. We did have to take a little bit of a hiatus here with our staffing issues that we've had for the last year or so. But we are nearing, we only have one other position that has not been filled, and it may not be filled. But in the meantime, we have been able to backfill David's position, and that was really a key role. We have a new program manager. Her name is Dixie Van Allen. She's fabulous. She's been with us now for about a month and a half, and she's just doing a great job bringing her up to speed. And as she does that, that alleviates some of the program manager responsibilities that David had been managing while also trying to be deputy executive director. So that was a bit of a challenge. So we are reinitiating our work on the JEDI plan, working with our contractor that we have through the end of this year. So we'll see some more information coming out in the coming weeks with regard to that plan and continuing a survey that we started a few months ago. Then for commission rulemakings, petitions, and other pending actions, in your meeting materials, there's 2 exhibits. One is what we call the perpetual timetable for rulemaking. And it's a very detailed chart that shows the various rulemakings that the commission either has in process or is going to undertake in the near future. Lots of information that's helpful for those who want to follow a particular rulemaking. So for instance, if your interest was in the abalone rulemaking that was discussed earlier, that table is going to reflect which meetings the commission will be discussing that rulemaking and when it is expected to be effective, or at least when we're going to be asking for it to be effective. And that even after the commission adopts a rulemaking, there is work that has to take place with 2 other agencies that we have to get their approval prior to those regulations becoming effective. So oftentimes it's 2 to 3 months after a commission decision before a rulemaking actually becomes effective. So if anyone has any questions about that table or how to use it or read it, please do not hesitate to contact staff. But you'll see it is a long list. There's a lot of work going on right now, and will continue into the near future. We also have Exhibit 7.10. These are agenda items that were approved for 2 meetings. One is next week. It's a teleconference meeting that's held every year. Typically, it's focused on salmon. The reason why it's not, the agenda items are not taken up in April is because the commission doesn't receive information from another agency. It's a federal agency called the Pacific Fisheries Management Council. And the commission needs to receive that information and a recommendation from the department, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, before it can make its final decision. So we have a teleconference meeting that allows the commission to receive all of that information following the PFFC meeting. This year, that's on May 14, next week. Those agenda items are identified, not only the salmon items, but also falconry will also be on that agenda. And then for the June meeting, that's our normal business meeting that's held every 2 months during the even numbered months of the year. It's a 2-day meeting, pretty long list. We've had a few agenda items added since then, but it gives you a sense for the kinds of topics that the commission is addressing at this point in time. And again, any questions about those agenda topics, feel free to contact staff. We'd be happy to fill you in. The one thing I would emphasize, Susan and Ari both talked about marine resources and wildlife resources committees. For those subjects of interest to you, those are really important places to begin engaging in a topic because it's out of those committees that recommendations come to the full commission, including potential rulemakings. And so by the time a rulemaking comes to the commission, it's already been discussed at length, typically through one or more of the committees. So those are really, these committee meetings are really important opportunities to influence what kind of recommendation might be going forward to the commission and the kind of information that's being used to support that decision making. So really encourage folks to participate in our committee meetings and help us shape and form those recommendations that ultimately go to the commission. And that's everything I have under item 4.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It was really helpful to see those draft agendas at this point. Any comments or questions? Okay, let's move to item 8. And Melissa, you're the lead on this one too, please.
Yes, so I'm going to take a step back for a moment. The California Fish and Game Commission is the state body that is authorized to grant state water bottom leases for the purposes of aquaculture under California Fish and Game Code. We have a number of leaseholders in the state of California, have had them for decades. But it had been a very long time since the commission had received a new lease application for a new lease. Several years ago, we received 3 new lease applications in a relatively short period of time. And there was no one on commission staff or on department staff who had any experience with a new aquaculture lease, a new state water bottom lease for aquaculture purposes. So there was a pretty steep learning curve for all of us. One of those applicants pretty early in the process said, you know what, we recognize that there is a steep learning curve and we're gonna let you work with the other applicants and figure that all out and then we'll come back to you. So they put theirs on hold pretty early. We had 2 others that have worked with us. You heard previously about San Andreas Shellfish. They are moving forward with their application and they're making great progress. They're getting ready to move into the CEQA process for that project. And then the other one, the third one, is Santa Barbara Sea Ranch. Santa Barbara Sea Ranch also had done a tremendous amount of work on this application and documenting some of the potential environmental impacts and modifying the project to address some of those and working with the various state agencies that have jurisdiction here, not in addition to the commission. And again, making updates and modifications to address concerns that were raised by those agencies. It's been a long haul. It's been a lot of effort. That individual is seeking funding for the CEQA documents, the environmental impact report that needs to be prepared, and is taking a hiatus. Has requested, sent a letter to the commission requesting that the application be put on hold for the moment. And we will obviously continue to stay in touch with that individual and seek the opportunity to reinitiate that application process when they feel ready to do that. But for the moment, that application has been put on hold. But I did include as an exhibit 8.1, which is the framework that the commission recently adopted for evaluating new state water bottom lease applications and determining whether or not they're in the public interest. And so I would really encourage folks who have an interest in what that process looks like to take a look at it. And if you have questions, again, feel free to contact staff. Very grateful to one of our staff members, Kimmy Rogers, has been our lead for aquaculture for about the last year and a half plus. And she's done a great job in helping us and in working with our department colleagues to update and complete a number of requests that some of our existing leaseholders had submitted to the commission and that had stalled a little bit. And so she's been working with the department to help get those back on track and get as many of those approved as quickly as possible. And so we're grateful to her for that. And she had a huge hand also in developing the criterion framework document in that process that was ultimately approved by the commission. So huge thanks to her. We appreciate her very much. And we look forward to hopefully working with Santa Barbara Sea Ranch again here in the very near future. And at that time when they are ready to resume work on that project, we will bring it back to the travel committee for a presentation.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move to any questions first. I'm sorry. Any comments or questions on exhibit 8.1 or overall for item 8? Okay, let's move on to future agenda items, please.
All right, so in your materials again, there is the tribal committee work plan. It was updated in April, exhibit 9.1. And this identifies the items that the commission has referred to the committee. All of the work that the committee does, whether it's tribal, marine, or wildlife, those committees receive their subject matter from the commission. It authorizes those. So you see a table here in that exhibit. It shows you the topics that were covered in December. It highlights, it says April 2025, but of course that was shifted here to the 7th of May. But again, identifies the X's, identify the items that were on the agenda for this meeting for discussion. We didn't have any identified for a specific recommendation. And then you can see the items that were already approved for the August 2025. Again, that's August 12, I believe, is the tribal committee meeting. You can see the ones that have already been approved by the commission for that agenda. And right now is an opportunity to revisit those topics, identify if there's others that should be added or if there's any that we think should be taken off. And staff doesn't have any recommendations for changes to August.
I think it looks good. I don't have any recommendations for changes either, Melissa. But I'd love to hear from everyone if you have any questions or comments.
No questions here in the room, and I don't see any hands on Zoom.
Okay. Very good. Let's I don't think we have any new agenda topics at this point, right?
Staff doesn't recommend any new ones.
Okay, let's go ahead and move to item 10. And we'll close with the general public comment for items not on the agenda.
Excellent. All right, so this is general public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to comment on this item and you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand button. I'm realizing that the raise hand button is not its own button anymore. It's now under reactions. So you have to click on reactions and then you can click on the raise hand button. If you're participating on computer, it's in that little reactions section. You may have to hover your pointer over the bottom of the Zoom window for those options to appear. And on the mobile app, it should be located at the bottom of the screen. And if you're on the phone only, press star 9 on your phone once to raise your hand. And if you raise it a second time, you will take yourself out of the queue. So don't raise it a second time. We don't have anybody on the phone, so I don't need to finish that one. So if there's anyone who would like to make a comment, now would be the time to raise your hand in Zoom. And I'm not seeing anyone, Chair House of Carmen.
Okay, any comment in the room with me? No comment on my end. I would like to comment on how amazing our staff is and the department reports and updates. Really appreciate that. Really enjoyed the robust conversation today about co-management, the definition of subsistence harvest, and the annual tribal planning meeting. Really appreciated the update on the natural resources consultation policy, and just really enjoyed the meeting today. So thank you, everyone. And with that, I believe we're adjourned.